Okay, I'm Nilza Martins. I'm a PhD student here at Empa, and I belong to the Laboratory for Biomimetic Membranes and Textiles. And as the name indicates, we make use of textiles to monitor human body function. So you are artists, and you work also with textiles, and my curiosity is, what's exciting for you about textiles? I mean, certain properties or characteristics that it's really key in your opinion when working with textiles?
Flexibility.
Flexibility. Mm-hmm. In which sense?
You can pull it in any direction, or you can change the structure so that it can be more or less flexible.
Mm-hmm. That's a very key property, and it's quite crucial.
The touch or the texture that is close to the body and how smooth or not it is.
Yeah, which plays an important role on comfort, right? And this is key. Yeah. Any other idea, perspectives?
Just the structure itself, how it's connected.
Mm-hmm. So the different ways one can integrate the fibers and what the possibilities we have in this perspective, yeah. Any other idea?
Surface patterns.
Surface patterns,
Visually.
Yeah, this is key, that's true. And in this sense, I think Empa would do a good collaboration with you, because on a scientific perspective, usually we focus on function, but visuality is also important, right? Because at the end, people care about how it looks, how it feels. It's important, right? And this is the characteristics you mentioned are quite key in our work. So our idea is to make a step further in medicine. And we know, we might feel not that good, then sometimes it just happens that at the moment we arrive at the physician office, everything is gone. Then we do the assessments, everything is right, and we're like, but I felt really bad the other day. Why is it that on that moment, just seems that everything disappeared. So in this sense, an important thing in medicine would be then to monitor people all the time, every time, which we call long-term continuous monitoring. But for this, we need flexible solutions, right? One wouldn't use these bulky and very big medical devices while going through the streets. It's not a possibility. So in this sense, textiles open an important door, because we are used to textiles. We have textiles near to us all the time. And if they are comfortable and good looking, then it's just an extra aspect that it's important and motivates patients to use them. So this is our idea. And for that, we use optical fibers and also other types of fibers that I will introduce later. And mainly we use two types: the pressure-sensitive fibers, which are these ones. You can have a look at it. And we also use the band-sensitive fibers. Basically, the difference between them is that the pressure-sensitive fibers, they are sensitive to pressure, which means that, for example, we can use a collaboration we had, for example, with the Kantonalspital in Zurich. We had these children that used casts because they broke the leg or the arm or whatever, right? And most of the times, or several times, we do have some issues with skin integrity below the cast due to increased pressure. So in this sense, we could use pressure-sensitive fibers on the cast so that we can have a view of what's going on below and then avoid these skin integrity issues, right? The band-sensitive fibers, on the other hand, it's more about playing around with the most important property about optical fibers, which is no loss of light. And that's why they use it in communication. But if we actually bend it below the critical angle, we can get this light going outside the fiber, and depending on the way we integrate it into the textile, we can direct the light to a specific point of our interest. And this is what we do. For example, to create these patches to monitor, one can use them to monitor heart rate or to monitor blood oxygen levels. And actually, you can stand and come and see. It's quite bright here, but if you come closer, you can see that we have different lights here. And they work basically on the same principle as our smartwatches, right? When we have these smartwatches to monitor heart rate, we see the light there. And based on these changes on the way light is reflected, one can get some insights on heart rate or blood oxygen levels, so the different properties. And please stand and see. Then another application we do have here, this is also quite interesting, and it's an example of the third type of fibers we have. It's about electrically conductive fibers. In this case, these are made of PET, then covered with silver and titanium, because, well, whenever we are talking about humans, biocompatibility, it's an important aspect. So the idea here is to have just a chest strap to monitor heart rate or electrocardiogram in this case. You can have a trial if you put one finger each side, and you have to do a bit of a pressure. Oh, okay, it's broken. It will reload. But basically, electrocardiogram, it's a signal that monitors or shows us the electrical activity of our heart, and of course gives us lots of insights, not only on cardiovascular diseases, but actually mood, fatigue, which is my research area, and several other properties. And so it's a key aspect. And we basically play around then. In this example, this was knitted as a single piece, and you can see it's super flexible, elastic. And there is also an important aspect, which is it's cool to have textiles to monitor the body, but when it comes to electro property, then it's important to make sure that the conductivity is the ideal. And in our case, when we talk about electrical or electrodes for ECG, electrocardiogram, we need to make sure that there is some source of humidity, which in normal medical world would be the gel, right? For sure, you've used these electrodes with the jelly stuff, right, to monitor several signals from the body. But in our case, we would like to avoid this gel because sometimes it's a source of issues and can irritate the skin. So the idea now is to use water and the body warm to provide the humidity the electrode needs. In this case, we just put water inside this package, and this membrane here, it is sensitive to water vapor, but not to water. And based on our heat, then it warms up, then the vapor comes and humidifies the electrode, and so we make sure we have the right signal quality for our measurement. So, sorry. Okay, here we go. It's reloading. Hopefully you will have a try, but meanwhile, if you have any question, feel free. I have here some other examples of the different integrations one can have. As I mentioned, this one was knitted as a single piece. This one, for example, in this case, we have the electrical fiber integrated during the weaving process. And you can see then the way we integrate the type of textiles we use really then depends on the final application. We have this example. These are pressure-sensitive fibers. And in this case, we use this conformation, for example, to monitor breathing rate, because usually, even in clinics, the standard procedure to monitor breathing rate is just to look at the patient and then count the chest motion, which is not the ideal, it's not objective, and honestly, nurses have no time to stop and count. So usually, it's not just monitored. And our solution was then, why not to make use of these fibers and then integrate into a chest strap? Why not the same as we use for the ECG monitoring, and then having them on the right side, right and left, so that we can have some redundancy on the signal we get, and then the fiber just changes the signal with the motion of the chest, and then instead of counting, we just have a more feasible and easy way to monitor breathing rate. This is just one example for these pressure fibers. And yeah, I don't know if you have any question.
So beside medical use, what other places you often use the fiber?
Well, only really medical, because this is our focus. Our goal is really to make use of textiles into this medical field. But sometimes you also do not directly to medical applications, but rather to performance. For example, in the military, they are not necessarily interested on using these sensors to check whether militaries are healthy, but just to make sure they are on the highest performance. And for example, my own project, it's about fatigue. And when one thinks on occupational settings, usually you want to have your employees in the highest performance they can, which means lower fatigue. And so far, there is no way to measure fatigue. It's just when asked, are you fatigued? You can say yes or no, but we are never sure whether our assessment or perception is real or not. So this is an application of non-medically, but still performance related. And yeah, and basically these are basically the two fields we apply our sensors.
when you began your PhD, did you know that this was the research you would do before you arrived here? Or it's developed
Yes,
since?
Yeah, on the last group, someone told that one of the special properties when working with textiles is that never the results are as you expected, and it's the same in research. So when I first started my application, I knew it would be about fatigue, and I was more into cognitive fatigue, which was especially interesting for me because as a student, we are studying, and then you just feel exhausted, and you're like, I need to study more. Sometimes we would wish to have this way just to prove that we are fatigued and not lazy, right? And this was my interest, and so we invited some few people to the lab, and we monitored their electrocardiogram and some other physiological signals and trying to see whether there is changes with cognitive fatigue. And we just realized that this is really complex because the weather of the day, your mood, what you ate, everything has an influence. And as a researcher, controlling for all these factors is just impossible, not a possibility. So we just decided to do a shift more into pathological fatigue, which again for sure has an influence on physiological signals, but again it's also somehow different, and we see this in post-COVID, which is quite popular now. These patients are constantly, persistently fatigued, and so there is a way to then go to them, and hopefully it's a bit more easy to monitor this pathological fatigue. I just have to synchronize. I don't want to leave before trying this. Let's see whether it's already working. Okay, we have one.
How frequently during your studies do you and your colleagues and professors discuss the ethical element to this sort of research?
Very often.
In the same way that maybe patterns come later, I imagine that the social impact might not always be at the beginning.
Exactly, and this is a very important question. So as we work with humans, we can't do any study or procedure without getting this ethical application committee agreement. Sorry, I'm almost done. So we always, before setting a study, we have to go through all the aspects, the risks, the benefits, and it's mandatory, literally, to do this balance between the ethical problems and the benefits for society. Though, as you said, some issues are just, somehow outside our view when setting a study, right? Now we just talk about, okay, it's good to have this long-term continuous monitoring and use the textile for this, but I don't know, in the future, this might be actually a problem if we think that then you have all your continuous data stored into a certain place, then there is privacy coming, and actually there is no yet officially rules on this, to whom belongs the data, what can be done with this data. So all these issues are just on a greater scale than our...
research that continuous monitoring creates anxiety.
Exactly,
this is the opposite of what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
For significant numbers of people.
Exactly. Yeah. So they would be like, and this is even when you do this monitoring of symptoms, they just see that if you are constantly asking, how do you feel, how do you feel, how do you feel, you'll just be really stressed and focus on your issues, which is also not what we want. Though then if you want to have this insight, how can you get, because this is self-reported parameter. So it's really, really tricky. And it's running now, wait. This is so if you want to have a trial, we have here the ECG. You just have to really do the pressure, and you can see it's a bit noisy because, as you saw, I have no water into the pad, but still you can see these peaks are my R peaks, which is the beat, and then based on this we can calculate the heart rate, which is here. And it's quite high because we are over time, and I'm like, I have to be done.
I was going to say, can we stress you out? We'll see it go up. We'll relax you.
It will.
It'll go down.
Yeah, well, fortunately, our time is gone, but you can have a trial if you want. And thank you for your attention. And if you have further questions, just feel free to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.